major labels didn't start showing up really until they smelled money, and that's all they're ever going to be attracted to is money. That's the business they're in, is making money. And they got involved with, major labels got involved with punk rock or underground music because it had become a really substantial, significant sort of community. There was bands like the Minutemen and Sonic Youth and Husker Du and other bands that were really, you know, making a living and selling an awful lot of records and touring around the country. And it was so, it was really established. And the major labels were like, hey, we can make money here. This is like fertile ground. And so once they got wind of that, they came in and just started. You know, I've often used this sort of analogy that of, you know, the farms, that, like, you know, each label was sort of, you know, each label had a kind of a, it was like a little organic, you know, farm, you know, just sort of people were growing this, you know, all these good vegetables, and but, you know, ultimately because of the low volume, like they weren't selling that much stuff, they were able to kind of tend to the soil and kept, you know, took care of it, so it continued to produce, and it was a really fertile pieces of ground, and it was like in a valley. And then eventually some major label flew over and said, like, fuck, that looks like good fertile ground, let's buy it. And they went down and they bought a farm, and the first farm they really bought was, like, I mean, I guess Husker Du early on, but really Nirvana. Once they got a hold of that Nirvana thing, like, all the other major labels were like, well, wait, where's that valley at, you know? And they all started flying over, and they all came in and just started buying the farms, and these farmers or label owners or bands were just like, wow, that's an awful lot of money, sir, we'll take it. The major labels didn't give a fuck about the soil. All they cared about really was the product, and because that's how they're going to make their money. So they just raped the soil. They beat it to hell, and then once they're done with it, they get back in their planes or their cars, whatever, and they go to the next valley looking for another valley. From our point of view, however, since we were already established, Minor Threat had been a relative success, and Discord was already an established label. We were just never interested in whatsoever. So by the time they came around and offering us a lot of money, it was so clear to us that what was really of value to us was our control. Was worth much more than any amount of money they could give us. But you know, there are many people who think that we were fools. You know, we were offered, you know, quite a bit of money in one form or another over the years. But my position is that the money thing is always the most boring part of everything. And I find it much more interesting and engaging to be a part of a community where money and contracts are not the central conversation. And that's sort of what happened in music. And I think in Washington, people have always been trying to, like, kind of, there's been a lot of, like, sort of emphasis put on, like, raising the bar musically and bringing new ideas, new approaches, and new sounds, and really challenging each other with, you know, sort of being blown away, seeing a band being blown away, and then going home and saying, okay, now I'm going to fucking write a song to blow them away.
Yeah.
And that's always been the case, and I think it's really well represented, like this, like right now in Washington, like on Discord, you know, you have a band like the Black Eyes and El Guapo and Q Not You and Lungfish and the Beauty Pill, Antelope, all these bands. I feel like they all are like really like engaged in making sort of music that is it raises the bar and inspires them. They all get really inspired, and there's, you know, about that music. So for me, what I encourage is that people, they push themselves, and they realize that they're in a like I talked to one of the guys in one of the bands last night, and I said to him, they're working on songs now, and I said, keep in mind, you can do anything you want, so fucking do something cool. Like, don't worry about, like, it's an unusual position for most bands, because most labels are kind of like, well, we want, they want songs they think are going to be hits. I don't want songs that I think will be hits. I want songs that are going to be interesting and good, and feel like they're creative.
Yeah.
I was talking to another band at one point, and I said that we were talking about recording, and they were talking about, like, they liked this other record, and they thought it sounded good, and they wanted to make their record kind of sound like that. And I said, well, basically, if I'm working in the studio, I think that and when I go in there, I have my philosophy is that there's two basic kinds of there's different kinds of records. One is there's people who make records that sound like other people's records, and there's other people who make records that people want to sound like, and that's the fucking record I'm gonna make. I know it may sell less. It may sell less, but it's gonna mean more, and that's more important to me. Like I don't want to I understand that it's sort of like this phenomenon. I think that Jason Dillon and the Wallflowers sold more records. One of the records sold more than any of his father's records. That's insane, but it's just the way it is. It just goes to show that numbers don't really have a damn thing to do with anything. The question is, if you want to make music that has an impact, for instance, I would say it's arguable that Fugazi has had more of a cultural impact than the presidents of the United States of America. You ever heard of them?
Yeah, I've heard of them. Fugazi's definitely had a
right, and they sold 10 times as many records as us. Maybe
I don't even remember that song.
Me neither. They sold 10 times as many records as us. They're huge. They sold millions and millions of records.
Yeah.
But that's just to underscore this kind of. It's just trying to get people away from the idea that numbers really have anything to do with anything. You can't. It's just ridiculous.
You just said that you kind of see networks like that as a library and as a resource, but other people see the music they make as their property, and or not other people as in all other people, but some people see the music they make as their property, and they're worried that if we don't lock it down, there won't be an incentive to create more music, and some folks in the music industry are actually saying that the music industry's decline means that music is in decline.
Well,
how would you respond to that?
At all? Period. Either one of those sentiments. I see music. If you make music, in other words, if people lose their incentive to make music because they're not making money off of it, they're not musicians. They're business people. Musicians don't have a choice in the matter. You got to make. It's what you got to make music. There's no choice. It's not a job description. It's not a fucking job description. It's no choice. You make music because it's what you do. And the idea, it's sort of like saying well, this person, an artist, they're a painter, but because they can't sell their painting, they're just going to quit. If they do, they're not artists. If that's the reason they quit, they're not artists because they're business people. It's not. You have to think. So I have to say that I feel like that music. When I make music, the creation aspect of it, that may be my experience. The song, I may have written the song, so I might think I authored that song. It's my song. But it's not property. It's not property for anybody. Now, if I make a record, if I make a CD of that song, that's property, because I paid to make it. And if I sell that property, the money that I get that comes back is my money. I'll take that money and I'll share it with the other people involved with making that CD. But this is what this is my position. You can sell CDs, you can sell records and tapes, you can sell mini discs if you're foolhardy, you can sell MP3s and digital downloads, you can sell all of these things, but you can't sell music because music is free. I'm serious about that. I really believe that. You can't sell it. Music is not, it's like air. You can't sell it. Now I know that there are people who, I know that there's this, that people have, here again, not to fall back into my oft-used analogies and metaphors, but this is the way I process things. I see music as a river, and the water in a river is there for everybody, and anyone who wants to have a sip can have a sip and have some water. Now, somewhere along the line, someone came up with the idea of putting the river water in bottles and selling the bottles of water. That's the record industry. Music is a river, music is water, and the bottling company is the industry. And they're not is not inherently evil, because it's frankly convenient to be able to have water in a bottle. So if you're driving in your car and you're thirsty, you don't have to drive to the nearest river and get a sip. You can just reach down and take a drink out of your bottle. The same way, if I'm driving in my car and I want to hear a song, I don't need to go over to the people's house and ask them to play it for me. I can put the CD in and listen to it, or I can whatever, turn on the radio. Where we get into a little tricky area, where it gets ugly, is that when the bottling company, because their aim is really to make money. It's not really. At some point, they may have thought like, well, let's bottle this water, and that way we can share the healthful qualities of water with all the people. At some point, it becomes, this is our industry. We need to make money, and how can we increase profits? Well, the way to increase profits is to try to discourage people from going to the river and having to buy the bottle of water. And they'll start with that, but eventually what they're going to get into is that they're going to start blocking the river, or they're going to poison the river. But water is always moving, and it's very difficult to poison a river, very hard indeed. And that's the good news about music. It can't be stopped. It will always happen. People always will make music, and regardless of whether or not it's like there's money made from it or not, it's still going to happen. It can't be stopped. So in my mind, like with the sales of records and all that stuff, the industry has done their best to like kind of claim ownership of music, but they don't. They only own the things that they sell. That's it. So when people who are songwriters say that's my property, and like if someone else, if they give it away for free, then I lose my incentive. Then, well, good riddance.